Professor K here, and next we're going to talk about how to handle components that have kind of similar styles in your mockups without having to rewrite all those styles all over again. So here I'm going to use the recipe for disaster assignment as an example, and as I take a look at my mockups, I'm noticing something kind of similar in two different places. One is this box treatment on my title, and it's also that same sort of treatment with the same shadow, the same border, etc. is also on my ingredients. So what can I do to make my life easier and not have to restyle that all over again? The way to do that is by creating a class that you can reuse in your CSS to style two different HTML elements. So let's give that a try. First, what you want to do is think of a good semantic name for this style. Just like you think of semantic HTML, let's think of semantic class names. So underneath my typography here, I'm going to come up with a name for this style. And this to me looks like a card shadow or something like that. So I'm going to call this recipe card shadow, because that will help me remember exactly what this style is. And when I talk through the style, there is a border of black, and I know that black is pound 000 as a hex code. And I also know that there is a shadow, and the type of shadow is a box shadow. So box-shadow. And I'm just going to throw in some values, 10 pixels, 10 pixels. This is exactly like text shadow, so it's an X value, a Y value, and then a blur value, 0 for blur. And I also want this to be black. So here, nothing has actually changed yet because we haven't connected the CSS class that we've written back to our HTML. So let's identify the two elements that would benefit from this recipe card shadow. In index.html, what's the first element that would benefit from this? I think it's this h1. h1 class equals recipe intro title. So let's add a space and then add our styling class, recipe card shadow, to see how it looks. Not bad, not bad, pretty close. And then under recipe ingredients, let's add a space. And then, actually, you know what? This recipe ingredients, that encompasses all of this stuff, including the title. I think I actually want to go a little further in. Let's do this on just the list. So I'm going to add a space, add my CSS class, scroll down, check that out. I now have that there. Perfect. All right, so we've got our basic styles here. They're being applied in both places. And now what we want to do is try adding some of the consistent styles between these two elements right in to our class. So what can I see that's missing here that both need? One is some spacing, and I know from my earlier CSS that when I want spacing on the inside of something, I want padding. That's the element that is going to work best for me. So I'm going to add a padding, and I'm just going to add something based on the typography, 1M, just to see. Ooh, that wasn't what I wanted. Look, see how much bigger it is around the title versus the list? That's totally not what I want. So I actually kind of want something that's pixel-based and will be the same no matter what the type size inside is. I like to use the same padding values throughout my entire CSS to create a sense of rhythm. So we're going to start with 10 pixels and see how that looks. Too low. Let's try 20. That's looking better. That's looking closer to what I want. Let's take a look at the list. Not bad, pretty close. I might want a little bit more spacing on the left and right than on the top and bottom. That's one thing I'm seeing over here. So I've doubled. This is top and bottom. This is left and right. It's kind of like a shorthand. And what that will do is apply 20 pixels here, 20 pixels here, and then 40 to the left and the right here. And that's looking pretty good. And so is this over here. Now, one thing that I'm noticing here is the recipe ingredients list has some like extra stuff applying. It's like it's not landing where I'm expecting it to. So how can I just double check and You'll have to excuse me, I forgot that I didn't have this at the larger size. So here, now you can see everything a little better. All right, so let's look at our inspector and take a look and just double check our recipe ingredients list. Let's check out the layout. What's happening here? So with recipe ingredients list, I can see that I have padding all around it, and that's right. But I've got these, oh, you know what's mucking with it? It's these extra little markers. That's why it looks like there's not enough space around here. All right, so all we need to do here is change how this list is styled. So you could probably get this by Googling like remove bullets from a list. I'm just going to tell you the answer right now. It's list style type is your property, and your value is going to be whatever type of style you want. If you wanted to test this using your inspector, one handy thing you can do is just kind of like start writing a rule out, list style type, see how it like auto completes it for you, and then you can kind of like arrow down and try all these different things. Look at all these different ways that you could style a list. It's amazing. Wow, there's so many more than I realized. You could do even like Roman numerals. What we actually want is just none. We want to remove it. So now that we know that that's the style we want, we can put that back in our final code. Just say list style type none. And when that refreshes, it'll stick and we'll have the right set of stuff here. I'm actually going to bring in, while I'm thinking about it, my font family, so that I have the right stuff. And just put it back to a font weight of normal. Oh, it's funny that that's still, it's a little hard to read. Let's well, let's try this at 100% and see if that helps. That doesn't. So let's do some letter spacing to give it a little bit. It's like really close together, all these characters at this particular weight. And that's not unusual in CSS. Sometimes that just happens. So again, because we're dealing with typography right now, we want to use a M-based unit. So I'm going to start with 1/4 of an M to see how it looks. 0.25, oops, M. Oh, too much. Let's try 0.05 M. That's still a little too much. It's still a little aggressive. We just want this to be readable. All right, that's looking more readable. That's better. And, you know, you can really get into typography and see like, there are like some WebKit specific ways to make sure that this doesn't get like a faux bold on it, but this will work just fine for now. I also want to just double check what my font size is here. It's 27. And over here, this is probably at 18. Yeah. So if I were to do a font size of, and we remember from earlier that 27 divided by 18 is 1.5. So that's our scaling factor, 1.5 M. That'll bring it a little more in line with what we're expecting. That's better. All right. So I'm just going to pop out of my inspector, get back to where you can see this. And again, making sure that my properties are in alphabetical order. It doesn't matter to CSS, but it matters to me as a developer. 1.5 M is what we want. All right, that's looking good. That's good and readable. I like that. Oh, you know what? You know what else is making this hard to read? This line height. Line height 1. And now these are really close together. Ugh. You know what can fix that? A space around the element. So not inside, at the bottom of the element. That's what we want. So what do we use for spacing outside of elements? Margin. So we're going to do a margin, and we only want it on the bottom. And again, I like to use M's for anything related to typography, so let's do 0.5 M just to start. Give this a moment too. Oh, you know what? I know why this didn't work. So this is for the recipe ingredients list, the whole list. We want this margin bottom on each list item. So let's write a new rule, recipe ingredients list, li, margin bottom, 0.5 M. Much better. Okay, so we're in a pretty good spot now. The final thing that we want to happen on both the title and this ingredients list is we want it to have like a tilt. We want it to like rotate, right? And we remember that because back in XD, we actually used this rotate and we did like a little negative 10 degrees to kind of make that happen. So heading back to our recipe card shadow, the way that you do this in CSS is called a transform. Transforms can handle anything from what you'd expect, making things bigger and smaller, to rotating them. In fact, it's a lot like when you would use the transform tool in Photoshop. Anytime where you get this kind of like this up and down, or this kind of like little roundy arrow with rotate, all of that is a transform. You can even use transforms to move things left, down, up, all kinds of places. Transforms are really powerful in CSS. So let's write a transform rule to make this happen. We're going to write our property, transform, colon, semicolon at the back, and then we have to say what kind of transform it is. So we've got a bunch we can pick from. This one is a rotate, parentheses, so that we can add a value inside it. And then we're gonna try 10 DEG for degrees and see what happens. So see that both of these are now rotated 10 degrees. We actually want it the other way, negative 10 degrees. And we can even see that if I had bothered to check XT, it says negative 10 degrees over here. So if I was paying attention, I would have been able to show you that right away. But let's just add the negative right here. And bam, there we go. That's looking better. Check that out. It's actually even, we're getting some of that kind of cut off look here. This is looking really nice. This is close. All right, getting closer every day. So in our next video, now that we've got this recipe card shadow and we've kind of done some work to make a reusable CSS class, we're gonna tidy up and get this final thing, all this spacing done, everything looking nice, and really focus on positioning. So let's take a look at that next.